Coming into an established program that's underperforming is an age-old challenge that many business professionals encounter as a new director or a new owner. But as we know, day camp is different. We're such nice people. It's our Achilles heel. We're loyal to a fault. We're community-centered. Our decisions can reverberate through our local towns. And we don't usually have a roadmap. So today, we are joined by two of my turnaround artist friends, Heath Levine from Shibley Day Camp out on Long Island, and our returning superstar, Jonathan Gold, the grand poobah of day camp turnarounds. This is going to be an insightful next hour, so buckle up, friends. This is the Day Camp Pod.
This is the Day Camp Pod from Go Camp Pro, bringing you the best ideas, strategies, and discussions in the day camp industry. You can find our show notes at daycamppodcast.com.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialist, go-to source for recreation solutions that will ensure that your camp thrives. Explore their website today at CRS or Rec. CRS is very fun. Scheduling shouldn't be so difficult and take as much time as it does. Come check out Camp Activities to learn all about their scheduling tools and they're specifically designed for camp by camp people. Save time, get rid of the mistakes, and get back to enjoying your summer. Find out more at camptivities.com. Let me tell you about CampMinder, the #1 camp database in the world. It has the most robust offerings and services found anywhere. Every feature works together to create a policy system that helps your camp office run more efficiently while giving your camp families state-of-the-art communication and financial. Check out the details at campminder.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Day Camp Pod. I'm Andy Pritikin, Director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District in Crystal Lake, Illinois.
And I'm Jordana Grossinger, the Director of Camp Robin Hood in Ontario, Canada.
And I am so happy to have my friend Heath here, fellow Mets fan. All right?
Let's
Join the
go
club,
Mets.
although he's wearing all green. You wouldn't know today.
Mets, Jets, Islanders, it's just miserable season.
Oh, he's just legitimately Long Island, this guy. And yeah, so as I was saying on the last podcast, we had a day camp conference out in Long Island, and one of the camps we visited was Shibley, and it was sort of like this mystery camp. A lot of people haven't seen it. And one of the reasons is because it's sort of laid dormant in a way. I mean, it still had campers and stuff like that, but they hadn't really put a lot of money and attention to it and stuff like that. And enrollment was down, and there was a change of ownership. And, you know, they had people who had been there and all this kind of thing. And he's going to help us. We're going to use his experience as sort of a case study. So, and then we got Jonathan back. Jonathan, 5 camp turnarounds, we've decided.
I think, yeah, maybe 5. Yeah, 5.
So let's name them.
Camp Discovery in Westchester when I was working not-for-profit.
Was that the JCC camp?
T camp, right? Meadowbrook, 90.
North Jersey.
Oak Crest, 2003.
Central Jersey.
Pine Grove, 2008.
Jersey Shore.
Tamarack, 2013.
Formerly known as Stony Brook.
Actually, Tamarack was basically a startup. It wasn't even a turnaround.
Yeah.
We had negative campers.
You know, bringing that back. Yeah. So we're gonna hear little tidbits of all these kind of things. But I'm so happy Heath is here because he's a longtime listener. He's always talking to my ear about these little things that he hears here and there. And I was so proud walking around his camp of all the little things that he's done that I know are just best practices of things that we talk about all the time here. So Heath, tell us your camp journey because I think it's really inspiring too. I think a lot of people will really be psyched to know as you toil away that you can make it happen.
Sure. So I grew up on Long Island on the South Shore. And as a camper, I started at Woodmere Academy. And then they opened a camp called Coleman. You may have heard of them. A nice big private day camp. And so I went to Coleman as a child. My mother was a group leader and a bus driver. And I vividly remember the bus in the driveway and going with her and doing the bus run. And then I went off to sleepaway camp, first to a camp called Oxford and Guilford out in Binghamton, which shortly closed after I began attending, and then to Camp Sequoia, which is now our friends at Iroquois Springs who are doing great over there. I did take one summer off for a teen tour, which I think is very difficult for a lot of campers to make that move and skip a summer, but I would highly recommend it. It was a really great summer where I got to see pretty much all of the country, Mount Rushmore and things that you'll never really see if you're not going on something like that. And I always enjoyed camp and knew that I loved children and wanted to work with children growing older. So I went into teaching and got my degree. And after college, when I was teaching, I went back to Rolling River Day Camp, another camp on the South Shore, which directly competes with Coleman, as a counselor. And then I became a group leader. And immediately after college, I was invited to join the leadership team and became the program director at Rolling River. So I was teaching during the day, and then I would come in the afternoons to Rolling River and do a lot of programming. I would come in on the weekends and do a lot of camp tours, and I started learning camp marketing and sales in that way. And I was then asked to join them full-time after about 14 summers seasonally.
Wow.
And I was with Rolling River full-time from 2009 to 2011.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Pause a second. First of all, we got to give a shout out to the Rolling River, the ladies at Rolling River. They're really tremendous. And Dad, who I don't know if he shows up anymore, but they're really a great family, and they really do a great job.
Yeah, they're my real mentors in all of this. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of other people, throughout the years, but Mark and Rhonda, the parents, really brought me in and took me under their wing and taught me, really everything that I needed at the begging.
The baseline. Yeah,
Right.
your baseline. And then going back from there, you mentioned Woodmere Academy. I think that George Coleman worked at Woodmere Academy, right?
So
When
I
he
wasn't,
started Coleman Camp.
I didn't know if this would be relevant, but
Well,
you
his
obviously
family
know
bought
this.
Coleman Camp, yeah.
So George Coleman and Mark Goodman were the athletic directors at Woodmere Academy
Oh my
when I was
gosh,
there.
some
And then
history.
George went off and started Coleman, and then about 10 years later, Mark ended up starting Rolling River. And those are really the two big South Shore camps right now.
All right, so now you become a full-time camp professional. How old are you at this point?
So in 2009, I am 31 years old.
All right, and you were always dreaming to be at the top kind of thing?
I wanted to just do camp full time and never thought it was a real possibility, and just figured I'd do the teaching thing and do as much camp as I possibly could on the side. But I never really expected to have the opportunity to do it full time like now.
Awesome. All right, so keep going.
Yeah.
Bring us to the
So
moment.
so after a couple of years full time at Rolling River and feeling like I sort of reached my peak there. Besides Mark and Rhonda, they have 3 wonderful children, Allie and Marissa and John, and they started to come back while I was there full time, and I knew that they were going to be taking over the camp. And I never felt like there wasn't a place for me, but it was never going to be my camp or my program that I really had the ultimate influence that I wanted. So I started to explore, and I was hired to be the director of West Hills Day Camp in Huntington, owned by the Gersh family, a camp that competes with Crestwood and Driftwood and those camps in that area. And that was an incredible experience. I was, I think, 33 and brought in to be in charge of this camp that was pretty large. I think when we started, we had about 800, 900 campers. And then we started to grow in those 3 years that I was there up to about 1,000, 1,100 campers as well. And that was really my first sort of opportunity to be the decision maker and to make the mistakes and, say yes to the parents I should say no to, and say no to the parents I should say yes to, and then learn all those things the fun way.
School of Hard Knocks. All right, so then you show up at Shibley. And this brings us to a thing that I want Jonathan weighing in, because I used to work for Jay Jacobs, and he did this numerous times, taking over these programs. And when you take over an existing program and they have all these people who have been there for years, and this is their camp, this is how they like it, whether it's underperforming or dysfunctional or whatever, they love it this certain way. And Jay, I remember telling me, you know what, Andy, I've done it both ways. I've completely cleaned house and brought in new people, and that has its issues. I've tried to be super nice to these people and give them raises and all that stuff. And that, nothing really works. Like but yet this is something that happens all the time. Businesses are bought constantly, right? And people take over, and there is a sort of an art form to that. So Jonathan, now that you've done this 5 times, what kind of insight you have with that?
Well, I think Jay is right. I think that neither approach fully works, but at the end of the day, I think every camp director has, I'm sure Heath does too, has a vision of what you want to accomplish at camp. And that vision creates a camp culture. And the most important thing is to find out who's on that bus the quote Jim Collins, who are the people that are going to ride with you on that bus, and you get rid of the other ones. Because if they don't want to get on and they can't contribute, you have to make sure they just don't fit. And I think as camp people, we're so nice and everything else, but there's a financial imperative to getting your camp up and running in a good way. You got to pay the bank, you got to make payroll, you got to make a living, you got to send your kids to college. I mean, your kids are you married, Heath?
I actually have a freshman at University of Florida, believe it or not.
Wow. And you're 31?
No, that was when I started.
Yeah, he's not 31 now.
I don't have a freshman. I must have missed it. I misheard that.
I am 47.
Well, I'm a you guy. You're in Miami. So, but anyway, yeah, you got to figure out who's actually buying in what, who's smelling what you're cooking. And then you can go forward from there. And I think the first year or two, you're figuring out who those people are, because a lot of people appear to be, but they're actually not.
And I think I learned that at West Hills, it was a similar situation when I came in there, and I knew what I wanted the culture to be, but I don't think I did a very good job of telling everybody else or giving that message on what I wanted the culture to be. So when I started at Shibley, before deciding who was the right people to be on the bus, I wanted to make sure that message was clear. And one of the first things that we did with the team that was there is to sit down and create a mission statement, because the culture was there. It just needed to be defined and sort of reeled in and then focused on. So we did come up with this mission statement, and then together we created our value system, which are the green values. Green, GREEN, which stands for generosity, respect, empathy, endurance, and nurture. And we have symbols, and we talk about them not stop. And we made it very clear that these are the things that are important to us, and we're always going to refer back to these things. And if we're making decisions without thinking about these 5 values, then we may not be the right people to be on the bus together and moving forward.
And Heath, when you got to Shibley, was that bus there? Were all those people there and you came in after, or did you all arrive at the same time?
When I arrived at Shibley, I started as the associate director. There was a director in place that year, and then most of the leadership team was in place that year. So I inherited a leadership team, and I would say, like Jay said, some of them were not on the bus and had to go, and some of them are still here with me and are the best members of the leadership team, because they bought into, the culture and the values that, again, were there, but we just weren't focusing on them and we weren't using those to guide us. But there were definitely people that were very excited to now have that defined culture. And then
there's not that many. I think a lot of private camps sort of veer away from those kind of things, or they're scared of that kind of stuff. It's more of like a nonprofit-y kind of thinking, but having gone through it here at Liberty Lake, I think it is super practical and great to do at that point. And also a great way of buy-in, right? If you bring all those returning people with the new people, and together you come up with these things,
I made mine when I took over my camp re-interview and gave them my vision and said, if this is a vision that you can get on board with, then let's give it a try. But I made them all re-interview. And at first they were angry that they were going to have to do that. But then I ended up getting the best fit people for what I was going to do.
Yeah. And what Jonathan said is just so true. There's going to be people who look at you and are just like, oh, I'm all in. Everything's wonderful, all that kind of stuff. And then meanwhile, they're talking behind your back and they're being toxic and all this kind of thing. It's so hard.
Important. It's really important to identify the skunks early on.
Yeah.
Skunks can do a lot of damage. So when I took over Meadowbrook, I took it over, it was the end of the 97 season. So 97 was my first, 98 was my first year. And 98 was my first year. And Ron Leiser, who I absolutely love, like greatest guy ever, said to me,
owner of the camp. He was the owner
of the camp. And he said, there are only 3 problems at Meadowbrook. 1, it's really, really hard to get staff. I go, okay. And he goes, 2, it's like sort of out of the way. So transportation is really difficult. And 3, there just aren't enough campers. I go, anything else? Ron, do you have anything else? So it's hard to transport. You can't hire anybody. You don't know if to do. He's like,
they have beautiful pools. They had beautiful pools though.
Well, they didn't at the time, Andy.
Really?
And so I took over And I distinctly remember this because it was a great, and I remember this about Ron too, because he was so great. My first year, I inherited this, leadership team that was very, they were teachers and they were very set in their ways, and the camp wasn't doing well. And so I think I started meeting with them in January. Same thing that Sam did. I had one-on-one meetings with everybody, and we started doing team meetings and everything else. And by April, I had lost 2 of them who realized, hey, I'm not into this. And then in May, I fired 3 of them. I was just like,
Wow. Man.
I was just like, I could tell they weren't on board. And I called Ron up, and I didn't let him know before. I think I did let him know ahead of time. We were talking about it. I was like, Ron, I just don't want them on my team. And he said something which was really great for a young director to hear, a young new director. He said, Jonathan, my money's on you. So, if you make it work, it's all good. And if you don't, I appreciated the candor. I appreciated the candor. So, and I fired 3 of them. I found people who were, again, buying into the vision, and you make it work. But yeah, people who are toxic, or the ones who appear, who are yesing you, and then behind the scenes are trashing you. That's like the worst thing. It's hard. Sometimes it's just hard to find out who they are. But once you identify the skunk, you gotta let them go.
Yeah. And then you get people who are ratting out people who aren't even skunks because they're trying to seem like they want to be your friends and all that. It's so complicated.
It's all hard. It's a lot.
Plus, it's exciting. You're finally getting to do your vision after being at other camps up until that point. So you found things that you like and want to carry on, and you found things like you're like, no way is that happening at my camp. So you finally have your chance to get your team on board. And so you've got to be really strict if you want to have it be your show.
And I think camp is such a unique place like that because everyone has such strong opinions, and it's so social. And it's so ingrained. I mean, I'm a 3rd generation camp director, and I've come into a leadership team that was existing. Some people work for my grandfather that are now working for us still, and I'm in charge of a lot of things. And so it's so different like that. And Heath, you were saying like about hindsight, about looking back and saying when I was at that camp, you would have done it differently. And Jonathan, you've given examples of how you can go about things subtly, but then like go hard and just like fire those people in May. I wonder if we can talk a little bit about like how you decide whether you're going to be subtle about these things and inch your way towards them. And then when you're like going hard, change.
I can say something on that count. I've thought about this a lot, and this is a discussion that I hear younger camp directors have all the time. And I have it with my younger camp directors all the time. And it's really, the culture piece is so incredibly important, because every time you make a decision that is counter to what your belief system is, or anytime that a staff member makes a mistake and that mistake goes unanswered or unresponded to, that's against the culture of your organization, you literally lower the level of performance of every other person. The entire organizational performance drops down. And that same summer, Jordana, at Meadowbrook, because there were a lot of returning staff there as well, and the culture was very laissez-faire, like maybe we'll go to activities, maybe we won't, maybe the specialists will show up, maybe they didn't. And on the 4th Friday of camp, that same exact summer, I fired 9 staff in one afternoon. I said, all these people are going. I pulled the rest of the staff together the following Monday, and I said, anybody else? Because this is where we're going here, and you want to work with the kids, you want to follow this program, and it's like, I am all in, and I'll do everything to support you. But if you're here to babysit or not do your job, or think it's just a summer job and find a girlfriend, you're out. And I'll make do. I'll figure it out. So I've never been afraid to say, well, because people ask me, well, what if that counselor has 2 siblings at camp? What if it's a bus counselor? And there's so many people that are afraid to let somebody go that has a key role at camp. In 30 years, I've never seen it not work. I've never, ever seen it not work, not one time.
Yeah. Well, it goes against human instinct, right? Your human instinct is like fear and what's going to happen and blah, 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 right? I heard a great quote recently that I've been using all the time. Culture is about what you allow.
The Day Camp podcast is brought to you by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, your go-to resource for the latest programming and recreation solutions to help your campers thrive. Check out the all-new water tag, where campers suit up in special vests and blast away with high-powered water launchers for the ultimate splash battle. Rev up the fun with new pump tracks, a modular, easy-to-install bike course that brings the need for speed to any camp setting. And when it's time to cool down, FLX Shade delivers stylish, innovative shade with maximum coverage and minimal impact on your site. CRS also offers prefabricated cabins, pavilions, and restroom buildings. Everything you need to create a better camper experience. For more info, visit crsforrec.com. That's CRS, the number 4, REC.com. CRS is serious about fun. You know how much work goes into building the perfect camp schedule. And when a key staff member leaves, it can feel like starting from scratch. That's where Camptivities comes in. Built by camp people for camp people. It protects your institutional camp knowledge and ensures that every camper gets the schedule you promised. And Camptivities does it all for day camps. Auto scheduling for staff, campers, groups, manual adjustments, over 70 reports for rosters and data analysis, tons of customizable settings, and so much more. Schedule smarter at camptivities.com. Don't wait until the new year. Now's the time to find a better way to schedule and save 15% for the first year. Camptivities would love to show you the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Let Camptivities help you get away from your desk and back out to camp.
I found that at West Hills and Shibley, both when I arrived, that sort of the staff has taken over. And, what I mean by that is, for us, this is our job and this is our livelihood. And right, this is, the most important thing.
The union was too strong.
Right. And the way that I kind of describe everybody else to leadership or to people I'm talking about is, for everybody except for the few people at camp that are full-time, it's a social club. It's a summer social club. And no matter what you do, no matter what you say, right, you have to accept that it's a summer social club. And, if you keep fighting it, you're just going to keep fighting it. So they're here to have fun, to be social, and you have to include that as part of their job. And then I found that at these camps that you come into that have sort of been, fledgling along or going downhill just because there hasn't been anything new, is that, the staff has taken over. And like the best example is, our aquatics program at Shibley. We had 4 pools at the time running, and there was great swim instruction happening at every pool, and every kid was safe as can be, but every pool had different rules. The deep water test was different at every pool. There was no consistency on what the staff had to do at this pool versus that pool. And so I think it's really important coming into a situation is setting those policies and really in and being the tough guy and understanding that, those people, as Jonathan says, hopefully you can identify them and fire them. And if you fire 10 people see that and you make it clear this is why they were fired and they weren't buying in. And, we'd rather have less people doing the job than more people to cover the ratio.
Charge the hill with a small committed band of people and aren't.
Right. And that first year is so tough because you want to observe, but like Georgiana was saying, sometimes you have to be a hammer, right? Because, you're not going to let things roll off the rails either. It's totally a balance. So you go through that first summer, Heath, okay? And now it's year 2. So what kind of things are you and the leadership crew like, now we have to hone, now we have to tighten up kind of thing?
So again, I think it's continuing to focus on that culture and what's important to us, and also thinking about our competitors, right? We're in a very, highly competitive market with...
That's the understatement of the podcast.
Yeah. Our friends at Pierce, I can throw a ball to Will and Courtney right now if I wanted to. They're right there. And so we really, again, continue to focus on who are we and what do we want to provide. And there's always going to be overlap. In day camps, 90 to 95% of the activities that the children are doing from one day camp to the other are always the same. It's the feeling and the focus and the facility and the people. So we focused on those values, and we really drilled down to wanting to be that down-to-earth, very nurturing environment where everybody felt welcome. And our number one goal at the end of the day, our goal as a camp, is to send your child home smiling, tired, and dirty. And if your child is smiling, tired, and dirty at the end of the day, then we feel like we've done our job and we're happy. And we want you to call us and tell us if they're not. And if they're not tired, we'll run laps around before we put them on the bus, right? If they're not dirty, we'll throw some mud at them or make sure tomorrow, they're getting dirty or scraping a knee and going home with a Band-Aid. We're very clear, and we started using the language in tours that, we are not going to make anybody into LeBron James or Billie Jean King or Guy Fieri at cooking. Right? We want them to do all these things and come home to you, the parent, and say, I picked up a lacrosse stick and I love it, or I went to cooking and I love it. And we just really focused on making things fun and interesting. And that was what we were all about.
So Shibley, folks, is sort of like if you were wandering in the woods and found a camp that had been there for 80 years. It's sort of the vibe. And they share a fence, like he said, with Pierce, who is like the Cartier of day camps, and it is impeccable on all levels, right? It's just amazing. But it is two different camps. That is for darn sure. And everybody respects that, which is great. And when we were walking around Shibley, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, Heath, to the north of you is a swim club that also runs a camp too. So really there are three contiguous camps in the middle of Long Island in Nassau County. How do you know as Jason Samuel said to me, how do you know you're in Nassau County, Long Island? It's pretty remarkable. Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing as far as delineation, right? When you're trying to figure out, your place, is like, you got to make yourself different, right? You can't be like everybody. And one of the things a lot of people we were walking around with at your camp, Heath, were giving you props for opening up new markets, being aggressive, right? And I remember I met Jonathan when he was starting out at Meadowbrook, and how aggressive he was in doing all the different things that he had to do to get kids in his camp. And like I've told the story before on this podcast about the pediatric dentist, Jonathan, about he went to this pediatric dentist in the middle of town that he knew everybody was going to, and he said, "Listen, I know you got kids." His kids were going there too. He said, "I know you have kids. I'll let your kids come to my camp for free. All you have to do is if anybody asks, just tell them
Half off. Oh, God.
all right, half off."
That's no,
Yeah. I mean, my marketing plan is based around making friends. That's what we say. We're going to make more friends. We're going to make more friends. We were at a preschool this morning in one of the local towns where we draw kids from, just reading books to the children, right? Simply in our Shibley gear, being visible and making friends and maybe giving out a few stickers. But that's brilliant, Jonathan. I like to find, children's entertainers. I hooked up recently with this entertainer, Susie Shelton, who's a children's musician, like Grammy nominated. And just on Instagram, I saw she was doing a lot of fun things, and I love music. I have my bongos behind me, you can see. And so I reached out to her. And so now we do a series with her where on Thursday mornings when school's in session, still there's, 50 to 100, 1 to 4-year-olds showing up at the park with their nannies, and we're starting them early and we're getting in front of them, and every single one of them is leaving the park with a Shibley sticker, and whatever they're doing the rest of their day, they're walking around town with their Shibley stickers. And finding people like that and being consistent with them, right? You can't do these things one time and then expect everybody to remember you. This is a series of concerts on Thursday mornings, and we're doing a wake up and dance indoor series as well. The area that we really picked up and grew is Long Island City. Before I arrived at Shibley, I was down the block at a not-for-profit Beth Shalom Day Camp, and I was not the director, but I was answering the phone, and it was a lot of, do you bust to Long Island City? And I would look at the director, and the answer was no, hang up. And then when I got here, I've realized that this is an area that needs camp and is looking for it. So in Long Island City, we've gotten into the schools. We get, as day camps, Andy, I'm sure you get a million requests, and Jonathan, right? Donate to this PTA, a gift certificate, right? So, and I've gone back and forth on that, right? Am I just giving away money? Is it really doing anything? And if you just donate, you are just giving away money. So we might donate a $500 gift certificate, but it also always says, we're available to volunteer throughout the year. Do you have a book fair that you need volunteers and you're having trouble getting parents to work at? Are you running a block party in Manhattan, a fall block party? Can we come and provide an activity, or we call it Camp in the Car, and we just put out a whole bunch of toys and stuff. But we are out in that neighborhood constantly being recognized and just making friends. in Long Island City, one of the things that's been very successful also, they have a movie night series. There's this big, beautiful oval that overlooks the Manhattan in the background. And so I said, all right, let's do a kids movie. We'll sponsor it. It wasn't a cheap endeavor, but we sponsor the movie. And now we have all the families gathering into the oval to watch the movie. Before the movie, they show my promo on the big screen. I get to say hi to everybody. And this year, as I was packing up, I had a camper and a parent track me down because they were in their apartment upstairs and they heard me saying Shibley Shibley to everybody, and they had to come down and say hi. So, we've really made ourselves the camp in Long Island City. In fact, a Facebook post I saw that made me very happy. It was, it didn't say my child isn't ready for camp yet. I need a smaller program. It said my child isn't ready for Shibley yet. I need a smaller program that they can still do, and then they'll go to Shibley where everybody else is going.
Like they're working towards it.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing. I love that we're talking about all these examples because to me, in my mind, a little bit, it feels old school to me, to be honest. I think everybody's talking nowadays of like how you could put your money in Google ads,
Web
and
optimization.
all that stuff. Let's not forget that you can go to school carnivals and you can go interact with kids and families, and that's your bread and butter. Or go to, yes, the area where you get most of your kids and talk to the like local people in that area, whether they're professionals or just in the community and at those schools. Because when it comes down to it, it's all about relationships. And even when we're doing the maybe higher tech things, I think it still comes down to relationships, right? So yeah, you put an ad out, someone clicks the ad. Are you following up personally? How are you doing those things? So I think in 2025 and in the competitive nature that is in all of these different areas, you kind of have to maybe do it all, but don't forget about the stuff that has worked since the beginning of day camps and all of those things.
And you've got to realize it takes time to become the camp that everyone wants to go to. It takes a lot of effort and time.
Well, effort's big, and Heath definitely has the hustle, and you have a big team of people. Like you have a big full-time squad. Like they know that part of their job is that they might be going to this preschool. They're going to this camp fair. They're going to this open house. They're going to this family night thing that a school's having, right? So we can have a booth there. Like if you built it in their expectations, they know that's part of their gig.
We have
That's amazing.
a very flexible work schedule, right? We all work and we all get the job done, but we know that this weekend we're out in the city Saturday and Sunday, so we come in for half a day on Monday and Tuesday, or skip a day here and there. But you're right, Andy. Those expectations were made clear that if you want to be on this team, you're going to be out and traveling and hustling a little bit to get us where we need to go.
Yeah, and I think what Jordana says is 100% true, that we have now been sold that we can do everything from our ass, and
Yeah.
and now, to me, in this day and age, like face to face and even direct mail is just so much more relevant because everything is so centered on your smartphone. What, Jonathan?
I don't know about the mail thing. I think people just throw mail out.
I don't know, Jonathan. How much mail was in your mailbox today? Probably nothing, right?
Like, well, it depends. It varies, but what you're getting, like in New Jersey right now, you're getting all the political flyers, which everybody just.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it goes back to that book, like guerrilla marketing. You're finding stuff to do that doesn't cost you a lot, but is getting you in front of people, and that's good stuff. That's all. I don't care that's always good stuff.
So
And you have to match it with the Instagram and the social media, and that stuff has to be done in conjunction with that, right? We are huge on social media, and I give a lot of credit to our growth to what we've done on Instagram and Facebook and using those tools, but those are just, that's just half the battle. You still have to have that other part where you're making the connection and being there in person.
So, Jonathan, when you were resurrecting Tamarack, how were you trying to get some market penetration since you were going up against seriously established places as well?
And we had, like I said, we had it's the only camp I've really started that hadn't like negative campers. Like we were like it was under such a cloud, and it had been so it was a whole involved thing with the previous owner, and the camp was actually laid fallow for a year. And the previous guy just took everything out of the camp. There was nothing there. And so we did all exactly what he was talking, all of the above. the fields that were nearby were big Little League fields for the town. We rolled a hot dog cart out with, material, and people were like, how much? We're like, no, it's free. Just here, take one of our, like, what town fairs, all the things, all of the above.
Yeah, you have to go one step above, right? Everybody
All of the above.
sponsors the Little League and puts their name on the jersey, but who actually shows up, right? To meet people face to face and get to know them year after year, and then becomes that recognizable person.
In fact, that year, my kids were older at that point, but I went back to coaching lacrosse for a couple of years with 3rd and 4th graders, just to sort of get in with all Randolph families, the local I mean, you have to do all that stuff. You have to do all of it. It's just, if you're gonna affect a turnaround in a short period of time, and that's the key. You don't have 5 years.
No,
Still-
if you're
don't.
paying a bank $20,000 a month in a mortgage or something, yeah,
It's
or twice that.
You got to get cash positive in a hurry, and you got to get some buzz out there about who you are and what's going on. And a turnaround situation, by definition, is bad financially, right? So one of two things is going to happen: you're turned around, or you're going to have to get another inflow of capital. And the second is a lot harder because you haven't turned it around, right? It's sort of like common sense. So, you don't have a lot of time. And I find that when your back's up against the wall, pretty well motivated.
Yeah, that pressure.
Yeah, it's like, you're pretty well motivated. Like, yeah, I'm going to go to this Little League game, or I'm going to do this. Or I'm going to, try to get kids in. Then you got to, then the flip side of that coin is you got to then deliver the summer that was like, wow, I got real value. My kid got value out of this. I mean, I'm sure, Heath, that you're probably not as expensive as Pierce, right? But every single one in your family's feels like, wow, we got a great deal with this. It's, that's value.
Yeah, it was Mark Goodman at Rolling River. I remember, we'd say, we want this for Carnival, or we want to put this new program in. And his answer was, okay, good. Go find me more campers, put more butts in the seats, and then we can do all these things. That's how it works.
So you rarely hear day camps talking about sponsoring things with preschoolers, like with infants or whatever, toddlers. Like that is pretty admirable.
But to this day, we when we first started, we reached out to local preschools that wanted to have a swim program at Tamarack. We still, even to this day, they still come in. These 2-year-olds still come in, and we put them in the pool in the middle of the day when we're having lunch and there's pool space. I mean, yeah, it's a good thing to have.
Wow.
Another good trick is, when you have leads coming in, right? Pay attention to parent email addresses. I had a parent email come in, and I looked at it and I double checked, and sure enough, she lives here in Manhasset, close to camp, but she owns a preschool in Long Island City. We're going to be best friends now, and I'm going to come to your preschool, and your kids are going to have the best camp experience ever, and it's just doing.
No, that's
other
one.
Great. Or Long Island City.
So it's shorter than Manhattan, right? So we
Yes.
we have buses from the east side of Manhattan, and those buses in the morning are about an hour, in the afternoon are an hour 15, hour 30, depending on traffic. Long Island City, because we're so heavily populated, is generally about an hour and not much more. But north of Long Island City in Astoria, where it's sort of expanding into, and those were taking longer than the Manhattan buses last year, just because.
Is it better to take Northern Boulevard rather than the highways, or what? It just all sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it all sucks. Yeah.
So he was mentioning the little kids and the babies and stuff like that. And it brought me back to a thing that I had heard, and it was reiterated when I was walking around Shibley. I was walking around with Mike Kulchin a bit, who worked there way back in the day and whose dad ran it for like decades and decades. And Harvey was like quite the sales guy, right? He had a lot of shtick. And wasn't there a thing where if like you took a picture of your baby, right? Like as a Shibley kid, so there was something like this, what Mike was explaining. If you took a picture of your baby and you put the date on it, that baby could have that rate of when they were born, right? But he also had a shtick. So when I was competing against Shibley, when I was at North Shore Day Camp, Shibley was actually the highest tuition camp, but they had lifetime tuition. So whatever you signed up at, that was your tuition for the rest of your life. So their average sale might have been a lot less than everybody's, but
To get Tamarack off the ground, and because we were basically selling piles of dirt because everything was under construction. We offered lifetime tuition if you signed up the first year and you locked in. And if you had a sibling come to camp, they would lock in on the year they came in. Where it worked well. It got us off the ground. It got us to the end of the runway and flying by the first.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and I feel like, especially when you're trying to change a reputation, you need to figure out how you can push people over that fence. I mean, I learned a lot from Adam Wallach, who's now at Mohawk. He was a real hustler when he was a Kiwi, and did a lot of really cool stuff. You are a leader of your camp and a pillar in your community. When your customers put tremendous trust in you, CampMinder's powerful management tool delivers the day-to-day task support that helps you make every moment memorable and every summer stellar. With 20 plus camp-specific tools in one, CampMinder's user-friendly platform is backed by a full team of engineers and customer service reps who are constantly thinking of ways to help your camp stand the test of time. Visit them today at campminder.com. Tell them Andy sent you. So I used to teach the new camp director course, the ACA new camp director course. And it's mostly people coming into programs that are established, right? That's like most of the people in the room. And one of the things that they teach you is you're walking into a situation where there might be traditions that everybody loves that are horrible, that you need, right? Are there any of these that you guys could cite as things that you guys remember?
Mm-hmm. There were horrible traditions. I think there were a lot of traditions. One of the big focuses for me when I came in programming was that there were shows for girls and tournaments for boys. And so I would say that was, one of the things that I really wanted to make even,
It's old school
across the board. And so we immediately added in boys shows, more tournaments for girls. We now have an incredible, it's the Colchin Bowl, a flag football tournament for girls, which is really taken off. And then I personally insert myself into every theater production and every show and sort of try and grab the boys with me and take them in. I think that was one of the things, that we really had to work on, the gender stereotype.
Yeah, I think those things are tricky also in terms of the speed at which you do some of the things depending on what it is. Because when you're the new person coming in, you already kind of have a little bit of a target on your back sometimes, right? Depending on what you're walking into. And so there are stories of those leaders that come in and they're like, we're changing the camp song. It doesn't matter what it was before. We are changing this. The logo, forget about it. I had an idea when I bought the camp. We're changing it up. And it really is a delicate matter because I know that at camps, people even get upset of rules and policies changing, even when they're done to keep kids safe, right? And when it comes to safety and supervision. But if it wasn't done like that before, then everyone's in an uproar, right? So did you guys ever witness any significant pushback too with any of those changes? Can we talk a little bit about that?
You're describing, Jordana, like the balancing act.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we are an extremely tradition-oriented industry, period. Camp traditions are everything, but we can't let camp traditions influence our business practices. And because you did it this way all the time does not mean that's the right way to do it, or the best way to do it. So I think that the line that you have to walk is, yes, you have to be very respectful of what came before you, but you have to get people that are believing that your camp needs to continuously improve to survive.
Yeah.
Like Tom Peters says, it's that one turn on the flywheel. It's that little thing. You put enough of them together and you got a lot of momentum and now you're spinning and you get, but once you do that, it's sort of preserving the old and saying, okay, we're going to exactly what he was just talking about, getting girls that flag football and, boys in the camp show and, all those little changes that don't take anything away from what camp was. They just add to camp in the future. But yeah, you run into a lot of that. And it's, I think your first year when you're doing a turnaround, a good part of what you're doing is figuring out what needs to stay and what needs to improve, how you're gonna, make it better. And it's no different. It's no different than any team, coaching any team. You're not going to say we're going to do the exact same thing we did last year and win. Every team you're going to try to improve, and depends on the players and everything else. Same thing.
Yeah, when I was talking about the pools before, right? I had the 4 pools and they all had different rules, but one of the
Different rule?
they all, yes, the deep water test wasn't the same, the rules staff wasn't the same. It was, yeah, that's the right reaction. And we knew it wasn't right. But they also had these cool names. There was the happy pool and the cool pool, and they were calling them these names versus senior pool 1, junior pool 2, which were on the
That's
actual
better.
signs, right? And I liked the cool names, and so I said, all right, let's keep this happy pool name. And the guy who ran the happy pool, he was one of the hardest people to turn around. He never bought in. We tried to give him his pool name and explain why it was important that when they went, if you're not here and or this pool is closed because there's a code brown or something of the sort, right? And they're going to this pool, right? It doesn't make sense that the rules aren't the same, and that the deep water rules and all that. And, you could see amongst the pool leaders, who was buying in and say, okay, that makes sense. We can go with that. And then you had, the 1 or 2 that said, no, I'm running it and I don't understand why I can't run the pool my way. And those people didn't last very long.
That is such a great example of the staff running the point.
Our whole-time leadership staff come from, right? They're all teachers, all your full-time and summer.
They're all used to being kings of their classroom.
And you're rewarded for not changing when you're an educator. The culture is don't do too much. So it's really a good part of the challenge, Andy and I have talked about this, are finding those educators that really want to evolve, or they're not happy with the way things are at school and they don't have creative expression anymore, and they want camp to be an outlet for that. And you identify some of those people and you start loading up your bus.
Jonathan,
if you're able to, I just want to piggyback on that. If you're able to offer to those people, right, the opportunity to go to a conference, maybe it's one day at Tri-State, maybe it's, one-off conference here and there, but I've walked into those conferences with people and see their eyes wide open, like, oh my God, there's all these other people who do these things and talk about them. And I think that's a very powerful way if you can get them into that world to see the other side of it.
Well, and it's the peeling back the curtain. I think at the beginning, Jonathan said that thing about somebody said to you, like, you've got it, like, you could do this, I trust you. And it's on you if it goes really well, and it's on you if it doesn't go well. And peeling back the curtains for those people that are in that inner circle with us, or you see the potential of them achieving that, is a huge perk and a huge part of being in this industry and really seeing what we've got.
Yeah, well, generally we're optimists. We see the potential, but like Jonathan was alluding to, one of his favorite phrases that I've said is that most teachers, right? Most teachers couldn't make it in our camps, right? We have a special breed that could do it in our camps because most teachers are institutionalized. They just go in, they do the same thing over and over and all that kind of thing. And I think that this is sort of what we're getting at. We're sort of talking around it, that a lot of what we're trying to do when we get into a new camp situation or a turnaround project or whatever you want to call it, is we're trying to figure out who has the growth mindset here, right? Who wants to grow? Who's looking for the highest quality that we can put out, right? Because having worked in schools, for many years before I did this, there's not that many teachers that really care about that. There's just not. That's like an entrepreneurial thing, which is most people don't want to do that, like we do.
And a lot of people will get into camp for the right reasons. First, they want to do great things for children, but then they fall into that social club. I've been here for 8 summers and I have my friends and I'm just going back because I want to see my buddies and we'll just do whatever we did last year. But like you said, there is no growth mindset because they just haven't been motivated.
I love the social club metaphor, Heath. It's amazing.
And it's bad if your leadership team start, like, this is the other part where I think you have to sort of identify the skunks, but once, and this is much more subtle, but once their priority is staff development as opposed to camper development, it should be camper development, and a byproduct of that is staff development. If they're not equal, because we pay staff, but campers pay us, right? So our priority has to be with the people who are paying us, not the people who we are paying in order to run a really great camp. And sometimes they get into that sort of like you alluded to, the union mindset where, hey, they're 17 years old and we got to be understanding. And I was like, yeah, there's a part of that too. But on the other hand, like I said, we're responsible to our parents first.
No, but to me, I mean, Heath walked in and there was all these people, teachers who have been there 20, 30 years, you know? I mean, that's different than a 17-year-old, right? This is like, don't take my cheese, you know?
Now that was very similar to Meadowbrook because there were a lot of staff kids, and like if your kid was when I got there, if your kid was in the pool, if they were at free swim, it was okay for you to leave whatever activity you were running and go in the pool with them.
Oh my gosh.
That was okay. And her girl would be like, "What are you doing here?" And they're like, "Well, my kid's in the pool." I'm like, "Wow, wow."
Go back to her.
Okay. I'm like, and who's running soccer right now? Well, I left them some balls. They're playing. It's good.
And it's ingrained in everyone, right? And then you can bring new. And if you bring new people and you're saying this is a great person to bring into this environment, but the environment is filled with all these other people who are in a different mindset than the culture that you want to offer in what you're running and what you're trying to turn around, it's like an uphill battle, right? Because they're looking and seeing that everything else is okay, which is crazy. And so I wonder, like, when do you know that you're making inroads with all of this? Like, what is it? Camper numbers? Is it staff culture? Like, what do you think was the marker for you then?
Question for Heath before, because it's dovetail right on that. Heath, so when you took over there, you had already been working there, right, for a couple of years?
No, I came in 2018 as the associate director, like brand new. And then the next year just became the director.
So many people, you must have had some people that you knew were in your camp in terms of, you must have had some people that were like, you brought some people or or did you just come in solo, Lionel?
I came in solo the first year because I wasn't really in charge and I had to kind of see what was there and who we had. And then once I was in charge in 2019, there were some people from previous camps where I was able to bring some people in, even if they just jumped in for a year or two and, were there to stay to help me do the things that I wanted to do.
I think Jordana did. It's for me, it was always the numbers. For me, it was like if you couldn't show the enrollment growth, particularly after 3 years, and you feel that energy.
Well, and it's return rate
Guess what? My third year was
of
2020.
staff and campers.
Oh man, 2020, Heath.
That we needed another year or two after that.
But you got to throw out.
But in a way, he's not such a bad thing, right? Because it just gives you more an excuse to be able to reboot things.
Right. It definitely helped us reset more. And then, Jordan, I'm sorry, ask that question again because I hadn't answered, but I just lost it.
The question was about what do you think that marker is of like how you're making inroads and how you're becoming successful with the turnaround?
Right. So, obviously the enrollment numbers. And I think also once I started to realize that people were going to Pearson, North Shore, and these others and coming to me and starting to look at me in the same vein as them, that made a big difference. But I also want to bring up, I don't know if you guys know Mario Del Cueto, who has done a lot of great research and things. And one of the things that he presented on once was that he came up with the golden metric of a successful camp is staff retention. And I thought that was very interesting and telling. And we made it a big point after, 21 and 22 were impossible for everybody. But once kind of things were swinging back in our direction, staff retention was a huge focus of ours with, holding events in the off season and communicating with, all the staff from your 16-year-olds to your teachers and your adults, because I agreed with what Mario said. And I think it's hard, the chicken and the egg on, are they coming back because you're running a good camp, or you're running a good camp because they're coming back? But I don't think it matters, right? I think if you put that effort in and you have these returning staff that are coming back every year, it definitely says a lot about what you're doing.
Well, it also brings it back to the first thing that you brought up, Heath, which is culture, right? If you have an awesome culture, the staff wants to come back, and if you have an awesome culture, and then the staff's happy, and then happy staff makes happy kids.
And you don't have to reteach the culture from scratch every year.
However, though, the one thing that I've found over the years is that everybody's got an expiration date. I wish it was printed on their or like you got to be careful, because I think we are a very sentimental sort of, organizations where, oh my God,
And loyal, I say
you
no.
know, and he does this fun stuff on stage, and he's such a camp personality, and he's great to have around camp. And then, like, there's a period of time where, like, you can't work at camp anymore. There's after, in certain jobs, right? I mean, I certainly couldn't be a camp counselor, filming, and so, or division head or whatever. And sometimes you got to, like, be cognizant of when people hit their expiration date. And one thing I found, I think, is that expiration date's getting shorter.
Yeah.
Because the job's getting harder and more stressful, and
Like 2-3 years, and I'm, and then a lot of your young staff are like, oh, I'm ready to be a division head. I'm like, yeah, no.
I think there's definitely that. And I think even at the higher levels, there's that, because that's what's happening in all industries too. Like, people are just staying in jobs for shorter amounts of time. So actually, the longevity of the camp director's life, even, is like, or career path, is shorter, is what I'm seeing around, especially those incoming directors. They're not staying for as long. And in talking about the emotional connection to like job titles and job positions, I feel like it used to be that, like, okay, this is the assistant director. This is like, if Andy's the assistant director, this is what Andy did. So whoever's going to come in after Andy leaves has to be Andy and do exactly what he did. But I think we're all learning that we need to be thinking about those positions a little bit differently to build succession, right? And to build other opportunities for the people in our organizations, because yeah, there's expiration dates on people, and you're going to be kind of naive if you think someone's just going to be there forever. Like, we're camp people. We want to be optimistic, and we love those stories of people staying there forever. But I think the business side of things, like we were talking about earlier, is very, very real. And the staff retention piece is so important, but you got to be realistic. And I think we should put that golden metric article from Mario in the show notes so people can see it, because we use that as well. And it was awesome.
All right.
and when they expire, we're sort of going through something which is along the lines of what you just said, where we had Bob Colchin, Mike's brother, was transportation at Shibley for 100 years, right? Maybe not 100 years, but basically, and had it all in his head, and he just decided to retire, and we thought we were going to fill his role, and it really didn't work out. And now we're trying to fill his role again. And what we found is, we found somebody who we want to add to our team, who we think is going to be a great team member and be perfect for our culture. She can't do the job that she's coming in to fill. So I'm reorganizing the team in a way that we can bring her in, make her part of the team, and support her and teach her that job. But then we're also going to learn what she's great at, and we're gonna shift our roles a little bit, because the most important thing is having the core people that you trust to do the job. And I think in our industry, the director of operations 1 year may do something very different than they may do 2 or 3 years down the line, depending on the rest of the team and where the camp is and the direction it's going.
I think Jordana hit on something, Andy, that we haven't talked about. I don't know how much time we have left, and we probably should address quickly, is that if you are taking over a camp, and whether the director was competent or not, if that director was well liked, the series of challenges that you have to face coming in are like monumental. I mean, because like everybody's saying, yeah, well, he's not Bob, and you need to be like Bob, because Bob is can't. And that's it might spending 5 minutes just talking about like how not to be Bob.
Yeah. Well, all I could say about that, just there's an example in my head about the sleepaway camp that I'm associated with. And most people, even though they may have liked Bob, they knew what Bob's deficiencies were. Most people are smart enough about that. It's like when you don't want to kick a kid out of camp because you're worried about the rest of the people in the neighborhood. And you're like, no, the rest of the people in the neighborhood know what's up with this kid. Right. So if everybody liked Bob because Bob let you run Camp Run Amok, most counselors, especially the type A ones, are just like, Bob's a great guy, but we got to get this shit under wraps. You know what I mean? So I understand what you're saying, but you wouldn't get rid of somebody who was a high performing, awesome person that everybody liked, right? That person either left on their own recognizance or
Got fired.
they were deficient in something. And I think most people get it. I mean, I give people a benefit of the doubt.
But the person coming in to replace Bob, that's like a huge emotional load to take on. And it's this lonely at the top feeling of like, you have to overcome those kind of demons that are telling you that you're not as good as Bob because you see what everyone else is like thinking, or you make those stories in your mind of what's happening. That's a real thing that you just have to overcome in these turnarounds and in any situation where you're coming
Yeah, you
into
gotta be strong. You gotta be
And
strong.
look,
And you have to
there's
be
a key thing
confident.
I think is the recognition of a more mature camp director. Yeah, if I was to come in now, but if I was 35 or 37 and I was walking in, everybody was talking about Bob or Mike or the guy for me, it's a hard, it's like, and you're dealing with it's a lot. It's a lot emotional. It's a lot.
No doubt about it. Well, because at that point you have what's it called? Imposter syndrome, right? And that's a huge part of that. So you're 100% right, Jonathan. No doubt about it.
And people don't you might know that you're competent, but nobody else does.
You got to prove yourself. It's that.
Yeah.
And you got to stand your
It
I
was
mean,
so-
honestly,
once I was talking about this very issue, and this person said to me, and I said, "Oh my God, it just feels like sometimes like you're falling," And he said, "Because you haven't built the walls around you haven't built up your walls, and you haven't built the structure, and the structure is what's going to make you feel like you're not falling."
yeah. Well, and your competent people you hire around you are part of that
Yeah.
structure. Yeah, no doubt about it. That is some great points. I just want to add one thing before we wrap up. You mentioned expiration dates, and I had a great conversation this summer with Jamie Pickles from Everwood, and we were talking about expiration date on campers in a summer also, because we were talking about how behaviors are getting crazier and how a lot of these kids, like, they can't come the whole summer. Like, and what she said was like, think about like if a kid was going to Disney World. Could they go to Disney World for 8 weeks? Like, it's just some kids would be amazed. They'd be like, this is awesome. But some kids after like 3-4 weeks, they'd be like, it's too much, right? And our camps are sort of like little Disney Worlds. And yeah, and there are some kids, I was thinking of a bunch of kids from this summer that, yeah, they were really good for about half the summer. And then they just took a nosedive because it just became they became too tired or whatever. It's too little, they couldn't keep their act together. Anyway, I thought that was interesting.
Expiration plan. Activity. I mean,
The intensity.
I'll tag on to that. Last year, 2 years ago, I randomly dug up some videos from like Oak Crest in 2005 and I'm like, wow, I was looking at these videos. I'm like, oh my God, these kids look so healthy. Their musculature, their facial expressions. Where's the anxiety? They were like, everybody was having a good time. The staff were all, like, I'm like, oh my God, things look so different now. It's a little bit different than it used to be.
Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Heath,
That's
for
right.
coming on and sharing your war stories.
Thanks for the invite.
I think it's inspirational. I think that, look, most of the people out there who want to be number ones in places, one day you may find yourself in that situation, and there's a lot that has to happen, right? And I could just also tell you, because having been part of a couple turnarounds, that there are books on transitions out there. There's great business books that this is actually a science. So you don't have to wing it. So yeah, we heard a lot of wisdom here today, but there's a lot of like science that goes to this. And it's really empathy and understanding how other people think. And like we were talking about, balancing when you have to be the hammer, versus let's sort of see how this evolves, kind of thing. And I just love that we just led with the culture thing. And I can tell you, he could spend $50 million on facility. Like, he's got an old facility, right? But it doesn't matter because he's got this great culture and you can feel it, and it's everywhere. He's drenched it everywhere in the people. It's in their personalities. It's in the stuff. It's in the signs. It's in their clothing,
Thank you.
Keep it up. Yeah. And the reputation is well earned.
Thank
So
you.
I want to thank my friends at Camp Minder, Camptivities, commercial recreation specialist, for helping us bring this podcast to you. If you like what did you hear, you should subscribe to the Day Camp Pod. So check out our show notes from all our episodes at daycamppodcast.com, as well as contact info for our show, for Heath, for Jonathan, and for Jordana, Sam, and myself. Thanks for listening, and make yourself a better Day Camp Pro. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of the Day Camp Pod.
The Day Camp Podcast is brought to you by Go Camp Pro and the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp professionals of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Thanks for listening, friends. Hey, Camp Pros, we love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, we hope that whenever you share an idea that you learned from the Camp Hacker podcast, conference, summer camp professionals group, or wherever else, that you're quick to give credit where credit is due. That way, we can all encourage more Camp Pros to share the tips and tricks that will make camp better.